you have, and that is an assignment on React. Right? So the assignment is uploaded on TapTap. I will add the link in the chat also, and I will share it in the repository also. Right? Some people were saying in the previous session that the 15th session URL, recording URL was not working. So I have fixed that as well. And also the code, I think was not there. I've added that as well. So the code for session 15, session 16, all that has also been updated in this repository. The next thing is a quick update regarding your projects as well. So the update that I have received from the team is that the topics again, since there are a lot of colleges, more than 150 colleges that we are working with, it is taking a little more time to get all the topics across, and there's a lot of back and forth happening. So they're working on that, and very soon you will get the topic as well as your team members. Most likely you will be told to make a group on your own. But again, that communication will be sent to you very soon, right? So yes, again, so there is a communication happening between the team and these many colleges. But since the number of colleges are a lot, it is taking longer than expected to hear back from the college and, get an approval on the topics and all of that. So yes, as soon as that is done, we will give you an update on that as well, right? Your college point of contacts, respective POCs, be it the, I don't know who the corresponding person is from your college, but they are already updated on this. They know about the abstracts. They know that this is going on. So don't worry about whether they're asking something from you. This has already been communicated to them, right? So yes, we will hopefully get an update on this soon. But as of now, the only update I have is that we are communicating with the colleges. And since the number of colleges are a lot, the communication is taking longer than expected. So very soon we will have that approved, and then we get to start working on a topic, right? So that's the update on the project front and the update on the repository. Now, coming to today's agenda. So today we are going to do a React project, right? So we've already discussed what React is. We have taken a look at different components of React. We have taken a look at routing in React. We have seen in the last session, we have also covered hooks in React. So we have taken a look at what hooks are, right? We covered two different hooks in the previous session. We talked about the use state hook, which is used to manage local data. And then we talked about the use effect hook, which is used to fetch data from another source, right? So we have seen these as well. Now in today's session, we are going to wrap up React. So this is going to be the last session that we will have on React, because we have covered pretty much everything that a standard React project contains, right? So we have seen how to create different components, how to nest them together, how to link them using the router. We have also covered how to manage state with the use state hook and get data, get external API data using the use effect hook. So these are some of the most common use cases, and these are more than enough components in React, of course, to get or create a real world application. There are a lot of other things also that are available in React. There is something called Redux, which is another technology. There is something called the context API, which is used to share data between different components. But these things we will explore later. So when we discuss authentication, that time we will talk more about context API, and we'll see how that works. But for that, we need to have a backend in place, right? So that is what's coming up next. In today's session, we are going to take a break from a new concept. So today we don't have anything new, but instead we'll recap all of these React concepts such that we discuss them once again, we understand them quickly, like how they work and all of that. And then the idea is to create a project, right? So the project that we are going to build looks something like this. Now, of course, this is going to be, so the topic for today's session is React project, which is what you see on the screen. This is going to be a very interesting project. So what we have here is a restaurant menu. Of course, the screenshot is taken from the internet. The data is taken from the internet. This is not my data, but we'll code it together and here, right? So I'll write all the code from scratch. over here. In addition to what you see on the screen, we'll also create one other page just to cover the concept of router, just to refresh or re-discuss, recap the concept of router. What we'll do is we'll also create an about or a contact link, and we'll just try to connect to that URL so that we can discuss router again, right? But again, you can see this is a pretty interesting thing that you see on the screen. This is what we're trying to build today, right? So again, we are going to take a look at, how to start with the application. We have already seen that. We'll delete all the components that we don't want, and then we'll come back and create this one by one. Now, this is also very important in terms of problem solving. So I'll be focusing on a couple of tips and tricks that we follow when it comes to creating a real world application, right? So this is not going to be just me telling you this is the next code, this is the next code, but I'll try to follow the process that we follow, in the industry every day when we are given a project or a task to do, right? So I'll talk a little more about that as well later on. But yes, this is what we're trying to build, and this is the primary focus for today. There's nothing else to focus on. So we'll try to finish, like build the whole project from scratch. And along the way, we'll recap all the other concepts that we have covered as well. So I'm sharing the entire screen now, right? This is the entire screen. And now let's head over to VS Code to get started. So I already ran the create react app command. That's the only thing that I've done so far. And as you can see, I have named it restaurant menu. So if you just see the left panel, the Explorer panel, the project is called restaurant menu. And within this, I have not modified anything. Okay, so this is a brand new React project that I've just created just before the session, right? Now, first of all, I'm going to quickly recap the files that are available and the role they serve, and then we'll just delete everything that we don't need. So the first thing is that the command that you have is npx create react app, right? So if I just type that command on the screen, it is this npx create react app and then app name. In case you're not able to run this command and it says create react app not found. So if you're facing an error where it says create react app not found, then first you can run this command npm install create react app. And once that installs, then you can run the main command, react app and then app name. Usually when we install node or npm, right, this command is automatically installed with it, but in some cases it might not get installed. So you can run this first. So in case you get an error saying create react app not found, only then you can run the first line of code. Otherwise the second line will work fine, right? Once we have the app created, then the next step is to cd into the folder. So that will be cd app name, and then the command to start the app is npm start, right? So these are the four basic commands that we need in order to create a React application and get it started. So I've already done this much, right? These commands have been executed, and as of now, right, we have the React application running in the browser. So if I just show you the application, again, it is over here, and this is a standard default boilerplate application that we get. Now, coming to the code that we get. So here the first file is readme.md. We don't really need this file. So I'm going to basically go ahead and delete it. What this readme.md file does is that it creates a markdown, which is basically the details of everything in terms of the application, right? So if I just go to the GitHub repository, this template, this syntax that we have here, where I have all the recordings, right? This is coming from the MD file. If you see, this is the readme.md file, right? So if I just open this readme.md, you will notice there is a special syntax that we have to put in terms of, making something a link, etc. But this is, I have kept it plain text, but we can change things here, right? So again, if I just go ahead and put a hash here, then this becomes H1 heading. Okay, so if I just make that one change in the README file, you can see this becomes an H1 level heading. And there's also this underline after it. Right? So similarly, we can make certain changes, change the markdown. That's the MD. So it's basically a modified version of a text file where we can have different types of values or different types of things, kind of like an HTML syntax. So we can have headings, we can have underlines, we can have links, those kind of things, right? So that's the MD file. Arjun, you can install Node anywhere. Typically, it should be within C, the default location that it gives us. That should be the typical location. If you're changing the location, then you have to set something called environment variables on your own. So it's not available on a Mac machine, but in a Windows machine, you have to go to start and search for something called environment variables. I've put the name in the chat. And this is where you have to go and modify the path of node, right? So if you've installed it elsewhere, then you need to modify the environment variables. Otherwise, it will be fine. Okay, otherwise it will be fine. There's a YouTube thing which says this version is no longer supported. That's fine as long as it's a warning. This is NTR Tarak. On live. So no problem. As long as it's a warning, it will not cause any issues. The application will still run fine. So warnings are fine. Don't worry about warnings. If it's an error, then that is something to worry about. So deprecated warnings, all of those things are fine. They happen all the time because we are dependent on so many packages here. So most of these packages, have certain updates and other things. So they keep generating warnings. They will go by themselves. We don't have to worry about them, right? So that's the first file, readme.md. We have deleted that. We don't really need it. Then the second file is the package.json file. Now this is a really important file because this keeps a track of all the packages that we need for our application. And as you can see, we need quite a few, right? So when we run npm start or npm install, like npm create react app, then these packages already get installed. So that's React DOM, React scripts, and Web Vitals. So these are four important packages for us that are pre-installed with React. In addition to this, it also installs this testing library called Jest, another testing library called testing React, and then something called user event. So these are some built-in packages that we use while writing test cases. So of course, we are focusing on development, but if you were learning testing in React, then you would use these packages. So we can remove these dependencies if we don't need them. You can also just keep them, no problem. It's just fine. Then the npm start that we run in the terminal to actually start the application, that comes from this line. So that actually, you can see it says run by the npm start command. So when we write npm start, it is intern calling this internal command, React scripts start. This will give us the actual output in the browser. So this will run the code, open the browser, open it in the browser, do all of that for us, right? And just like this, we also have the build command. This is something that we will use when deploying the application. So when we want to take the application and put it online, we'll discuss that in the last session. So when we have to do that, that is when we'll run npm build or npm run build, right? Then we have the test command again. If you were testing, we would write this test command. And eject is again basically to stop or rebuild, which is not what we are concerned with right now. Okay. Now, whenever we will use another package, we are going to add to this. So when we install router or when we install any other package for that matter, right, Axios or anything else that we need in our application, we are going to come back to this file and it will automatically be added here. So once we run the npm install command, right, the corresponding dependency will automatically be mentioned over here, right? Then the package log is automatically generated based on package.json, and it keeps a track of all the sub dependencies of these. So we have four dependencies, and then there are going to be sub dependencies. For example, React might depend on several other packages. React DOM might depend on several other packages. So all of those sub dependencies are tracked here in package.json, right? So you can see here there are so many other packages. This list is way longer than what we have in package.json. So these are all going to be sub dependencies. Again, we don't really have to work with the file at all. It will automatically be maintained or managed by the system. Then by default, when we run the React app, Git is automatically initialized. So this git ignore file comes from there. It basically just hides all the stuff that we don't really need right? When it comes to uploading this on GitHub. Again, this will come in handy when we deploy the application. So that's something we'll take a look at later on as well. Then within source, we have all the standard things. I'm going to remove the logo, remove the test files, and remove everything that we don't really need. So I'll just delete all of that, right? Then in the index.js also, let's remove all of these imports that we don't need. So this is not needed. And finally, in the app.js, we get the default starter code. So the output that we see in the browser, that is coming from the app.js file, right? So I'm going to clear this out as well. And we'll just put h1. This is the output for now. Now, how this works again, like we have discussed, is that it first goes to the public folder. Within public, we have a file called index.html. This file contains one div with the ID root, right? This is where it all begins. So this root is where all the execution starts. What React does is it controls the entire output by taking this root or taking control of this root. And whatever change we want to make happens within this single HTML element, right? And this is the only HTML file that we have in the entire project. So basically, this is why this is called a single page application, because technically speaking, there is only one HTML file in the entire project, right? So that's the setup. Then the starting point of the file is this index.js. This is where it is happening. See, document.get element by ID root. So we take the root div from HTML and we create it as a React root. So this is the React setup. Then we say root.render. So this is basically just going to render React in the output. We can also remove that strict mode. What that strict mode tag basically does is it just runs everything twice. So just to be sure, it runs everything twice. So this strict mode that we get by default, this is just running everything twice. So whenever we run use effect, it is run twice. Whenever we have anything, it runs twice, just to make sure everything will work. So this is done during development only. In the production application, we never keep the strict mode. We remove it. It's only meant for development or testing, right? Perfect. So this is what we have in terms of the bare bones syntax that is available to us. Now let us switch to our output and try to work with that one by one. Right. So first up, we'll figure out how to structure our application. What kind of components do we have? All of that. And then we'll take a look at the actual code. Right. So the first thing that we will do is to, again, I'll just take the marker here and I'll just break this down into different components, right? So naturally, this entire thing is going to be one component, which is the menu itself. So this is our outer component. And then since the dishes are repeated, right? Since the dishes here are repeated, what we can do is we can take this bit, this much for a dish, and we can put it inside another component. So then we can call it n number of times to showcase all the dishes based on the data that we will have available. Okay, so this is going to be our component structure. So this R menu, this line under it, the buttons, they will be a part of the main component itself. And then these dishes, this will come from another smaller component. We'll call it dish. Right. So depending on whatever button is clicked, what we have to do is by default, we have to show all dishes, right? Then if you click on the breakfast button, then only the dishes which have the category breakfast, they should be shown. Similarly, if you click on the lunch button, only the lunch dishes should be shown. The same is there for shakes also and for dinner also, right? So you can see there's only one milkshake, two shakes. This is the Godzilla milkshake and then the Oreo Dream. So if I click on the shakes button, what should happen is everything else should go away. Only this milkshake and this Oreo shake, these two things should be shown to us. So that is the application. That is the output that we are looking for, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at the code here. So again, we are going to start by structuring the entire project. This is something to keep in mind. Whenever we work on a real world project, what I typically like to do is I create a new folder. I call it components. Again, this is what most developers do. We typically don't use app at all. So I can just delete this. And then inside this components folder, we create all the individual components, right? So let's call it menu.js. This is going to be the main component, the entire thing. And then we can create something called dish.js. This is going to be for individual dish. Now, this requires a capital letter. So we typically put a capital letter in the file name. It is not a mandate, but it is a convention. So whenever we have a new component, you can see the D for dish is capital, M for menu is capital. So we typically use capital names while naming component files. And there, basically, the first letter is capital, right? Then the extension is .js, of course, and they are inside another folder. If this was a more complicated project where we have different pages, so then we could make other folders. For example, home folder, then we can make about folder, then we can make, let's say, contact folder. And within these, we would then keep components. So if the home folder had 4 components, those 4 components will go inside home folder. If the contact page had 2 components, they will go inside contact folder, and so on. So we follow a good folder structure and something like this in a bigger project. But here right now, since we only have 2 components, we'll have a third component for router that will come in later. But for now, we only have 2 components, so it's going to be very simple. We can directly put it over there. 2 to 3 files, we can directly put. If the number of files go beyond 5, then we typically make subfolders and put them properly, right? So to keep the structure organized. Because in the real world setup, and even when you guys work in teams, what will happen is that different people will work on different parts of the project, right? It will not happen that one person will make the entire project. So you will be allocated one part, the team member, somebody else will make another component. So to keep it separate, right, to keep your priorities separate, to keep concerns separate, what we do is we follow a proper folder structure so that nobody else's code gets overlapped with your code, or their code does not affect your code does not interfere with their code. So we try to keep the structure like this. This is typically the first step. The second step that I like to typically do is just give default, the default, hold on 1 second. Yes. So the second thing that I typically like to do is I just create empty component structure first, right? Before I actually write the logic for any component, what I like to do is I just create empty component structure, and then I go ahead and I write the actual logic, right? So for example, first we write the import line, then we create this bare bones template. Let's call it menu. And I just return something like this just to, see that this is menu. Okay. In this case, since we need multiple dishes inside this, we can type something more concrete. For example, menu starts here, right? And then I'll just make one more copy of this and say menu ends here. Okay. And then what I will do is I will also write bare bones for the dish. So this is my dish component, right? This is the dish. And then we can just call it several times just to see if it is working fine or not, right? Since we are going to use multiple dishes in the menu, I typically like it this way. I typically structure it this way, right? Then finally, what I do is we have to put menu in the index instead of the app. So we can just go ahead and put that in, remove the app import. And now when we check the output, we will just get a bare bone structure, right? So if I just refresh now, it says my code is not running. So let me go ahead to the terminal and npm start. So now we should be able to see the bare bone structure, which is now visible, as you can see. Right? So menu starts here, dish, 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 then menu ends here. This resembles the output to a very small extent, obviously, but at least we have that, we have the understanding that a basic template is in place, right? So this is typically my second step. I typically don't, there are other developers who, what they'd like to do is they like to finish one component entirely first. So for example, they would first create the entire menu, and then they will create the entire dish, and finally they will put them together like this. But what I typically like to do is just to get a better understanding of what is being built, I try to put it all bare bones first. And just 1 line, 2 lines in each component, just set up the entire structure so that I understand what is to be done, how many components are to be made, and what kind of code is to be written in every component. So I like to get this idea first before I start working on the actual logic, right? So this is done now. Now let's focus on the dish, I think, because this is going to be the most important part here. We are going to spend some time to style this as well. right? So let's work with this dish first, and then we can focus on the menu. So this is going to be a div. We can also make it a section if you want to. So again, those tags are up to you. You can use section, article, all of those, or just a plain simple div will also work fine. Now, for the dish to be visible, we already have called it thrice, so it will show up, which is fine. Now, naturally, since the menu will call the dish, all the values that we will need in the dish will be passed down from the menu, right? So that's what the structure is going to be. Because when we see the output, obviously the idea is that the dish is going to be generic. This component is going to be generic. Right? So let's work with this. Let's see what we have here, right? So the first thing that we have here is the image. So you can see the structure now, right? The structure is very important now because we are now coding this out. So the first thing is we split this into two. So this is going to be two halves of the component. In the left half, we have the image with a border. In the right half, there is the heading of the dish. There is a paragraph description and there is a price. This again is a smaller chunk over here, right? So can you tell me quickly in the chat, what is this outermost structure? What CSS can we use to achieve this output, this outermost output that we have? So let me go back to the outermost structure. This, how can we achieve this structure in CSS, where we have something in the left half, something in the right half? Flex, perfect. So flex box is what I was looking for. Flex is the correct answer, right? So the property is displayed, the value is going to be flex. Perfect. Let's take a look at how we can do this. So again, now what we can do is we can add the CSS in two places. By default, we have a file called index.css. So obviously we can add this over here. We could also create a specific CSS file for the dish itself, call it dish.css, and then import that over here as well, right? So that will be dot slash dish dot css. Dot slash because it is in the current folder, the same folder. So this will work fine. Now we can write all the code in dish dot css. We could also do this in index. In this case, since it's a smaller thing with only two components, it will not really matter. If it's a bigger project, then we create separate CSS per component to avoid complexity, right? Perfect. So let's give this a class name. Again, in React, we don't have class, we have class name, right? So this is how we write it. Let's call this dish. Then within this, we have, so this will become a flex, right? Now within this flex, what do we have? We have something on the left half, that's the image, and then another div on the right hand side. So the image source, let's keep it empty for now. This is going to be the left side of the div. And then for the right hand side, we have another div. This is going to be, let's say, dish details, right? This dish details will again become a flex, right? Or rather, within this dish details, one part will become a of flex box, which is this one, the title and the price, and then the rest of it is normal arrangement. So what we can do is we can make a similar structure in the code as well. So again, it is very simple. We just have to look at the output and figure out what is the best approach. So within this, we can have another div. This can be given a class of, let's say, heading price wrapper, something like this, right? And then we can go ahead and we can use HR over here, and then the description of the dish will go down there, right? So this is description, right? And then within this, again, we can have two halves. The first, let's not put H1, let's go for H2 probably, because H1 is going to be our menu. That's the biggest heading. So this is going to be the dish title. And then we will have, let's go for H3. This is dish price. Okay. So we have the entire setup in place. Let's put alt as well and call it dish image like so. Now let's quickly style this. So we need to make two flex boxes. The first is this dot dish. So this will become a flex. So the style is display flex, right? And then we'll say justify content. We have to move them to the corners. So that will be space between, push to both the ends. Similarly, we will also make the dish details or this heading price wrapper as a flex. So I just put that in. Since it's a class, we are using dot and we can combine multiple styles like so, right? So at this point, if we go ahead and check our output, you can see we have the output that we want. Of course, you can see the dish image is taking the left part and the title, price, and description are taking the right half. Naturally, the padding and spacing will need to be modified once the data comes in, right? And then the whole thing also needs to be in a flex. So if we check the output, there are two dishes per screen, or two dishes, two or three. We can also add three in the entire screen. So that will happen over here once we call the dish, right? So this can be the div now, and this can be class name dish wrapper because it's going to contain all the dishes. And then inside this, we can call all the individual dish, right? So let's pass them three here and then style this as well. So now for the menu, again, we can make another CSS, call it menu.css, and then import it over here. So import dot slash menu dot css, and then we can write one line only, that is this wrapper display flex, right? And here we can say justify content space evenly or space around. Either one of them should be fine. Now you can see we are very close to the output that we want it. As you can probably see, it is working as expected. And we can also use, something like space evenly. This will also be fine. If we want only two dishes in the whole thing, then we have to give the dish a width. So to this individual dish, we can give a width, and we can basically say, let's say 40% or something like this. So now then this should ideally bring it down to two dishes. Again, we'll worry about that later. For now, we have the output that we want, right? The next step is to work with the data or pass the data from the parent to the child, which will be done with the help of something called, can you tell me in the chat what this is called? How do we pass the data from the parent component to the child component? Props, perfect, right? So you guys are getting the hold of this. So this is called props, right? And what we can do is we can write props inside the dish like so, right? So this props will of course come from the menu, and these will be the properties or the data that we pass in for every dish. So let's begin with the source. Now we can say props dot, let's say dish image. I'll also double check this with the data later on in just a minute. Then here the title will be changed from this to dish, sorry, props dot, let's say title, right? Then here we will have props dot price. And then finally at the bottom here, we can have props dot description. Remember, we have not done the exact CSS. Of course, you can always do that, changing the colors and stuff like that. We can always do this, but I'm just trying to give you a generic overview of the entire process. So now if we check, everything is gone, right? Because obviously we haven't passed any props yet. So let's try passing a sample set of props here. So the first is dish image, right? So we are going to have that dish image. This is the first thing. Then we have the title, price, and description. Let me make sure the spelling is right. So then we need title equal to, then we need price equal to, and finally we need description equal to. So these are all the properties. Let's just pass in sample data. Let's call it title. Let's say 100.00. And let's just say this is description, right? Let's see what we get. And you can see we get the structure, right? If you check the output, this resembles a structure exactly. Of course, the arrangement and things could change, but more or less we have the structure. One quick change that I will make is I will make both of these H3s or both of these H2s so that they have the same size. So this is one change that I will make, because in the output, they are the same size. Of course, the size is smaller, but they are still the same size, right? Perfect. So now we have the data being passed properly, which means our props structure is also working fine. Again, so my point here is, whenever we are working with anything that is going to be dynamic, or whenever we are going to pass any data down to a component, I just try it out with dummy data, right? Again, I create a component with dummy data to see if it is showing up in the output or not. When we are using props, I pass down dummy data just to figure out if this is working or not, right? So these are the kind of things that I do just to make sure that the output is showing up. I don't really like to create everything in one go and then sit and solve all the errors that show up, right? So I usually do it step by step by checking the output at each step so that it works as expected, right? So yes, that's the setup that we have. And now finally we are down to the logic. So let me quickly show you the data I'll just copy and paste it from the file that I have available with me, and then we can focus on working with the data. Right. So let me just go ahead and do that. Just give me a second. I'll just copy this. And then I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to figure out the logic, right? So that is something that I want you to think about before I just go ahead and show you how it is done. I just want you to give it a thought. Right. So here is our data. I'll just paste it after this. It says, and this is it, right? So this is our data. It's called menu. We can also call it menu data, all dishes, whatever name you want to give it. Right. This is the data that we have. Again, I have just used dummy data. You can see we have ID, title, category, price, and image. Okay. So I will add the images as well in just a minute into this folder. But for now, we have all the data available with us. We have about 9 dishes, as you can see, right? So now the first step obviously is to show these 9 things on the screen, one dish for everything. And then we'll focus on the button logic. So then we'll figure out, okay, how do we get the functionality in place, right? So let's take a look at how do we display these. Well, to display these, what we are going to do is we are going to work with something called all dishes. That's the array of objects that we have. And remember these, we have title, category is going to be our filter, price, image, and description. These are the data pieces that we have. Perfect. Now over here, I'll just probably keep them commented for now. We can say all dishes dot map, right? So the map method, if you remember, is going to help us display data out on the screen, right? And what we do is we say within the map, right? We are going to just go ahead and okay, I think there's this needed and done. So within the map method, we are going to say each dish. So do this for each dish or each item in the menu, right? And what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and we want to display them entirely. So we're just going to call our dish component for each dish, right? And then we'll just pass on the props. So these are the 4 props. I will just copy them and paste them here. So this is dish.image. So again, this is coming from our menu now, dish.image. Then let's work with dish.title. I think it was also called title. Then for the price again, it's called dish.price. And then finally, here we have something called dish.desc. I think this is it, right? This is everything that we have. If we check our output now, oh yes, we also have to return this. So we can say return and then put this inside the return brackets, right? So that way it should work as expected. And now you can see we get all our dishes on the screen. Okay. Now the reason why they're showing up in one line obviously is because we have not set the flex wrap. If you remember, so we can say flex wrap to wrap. So this way they can also go to the next line. And now you can see they are all over the place. But my point is we are able to get 9 dishes on the screen, right? The only thing missing is the images. I'll just add those in as well. But in the meanwhile, what I want you to do, and for this, I will put a timer on the screen. What I want you to do is I want you to focus on the button logic. So basically the challenge is you can take a pen and a paper to do this. You can also write some code if you want to figure this out. But what I want you to do is take a piece of pen and a paper and try to figure out what exactly can we do, what logic can we incorporate to get this functionality in place, right? So basically, whenever we click on a button, the corresponding dish should be shown. Right? Whenever we click on breakfast, only breakfast item should be shown. Whenever we click on, let's say lunch, only lunch items should be shown. So we are working on a logic. We will be working on a logic for this, right? So it's about 6:45 now, 6:46 now. I'll give you 10 minutes to work the logic, right? So again, try to write this code. You have React on your systems. Don't write this code that I have written, but just try to figure out how do we work with this logic. So naturally, we'll have a button, we'll have on click, we'll have an event handler, all of those things. So give it a thought. Just try to figure out what kind of logic could we write to get to the output that we have, right? What I will do is I will just put a quick timer on the screen just so that you get to see how much time is left. Right. So this is going to be a 10-minute timer, as you can see. So again, take a piece of pen and a paper or your code, figure out the logic for this step by step. And once you're done, put the logic in the chat, right? So just copy the whole thing and put the logic in the chat, right? So yes, you can write the logic in JavaScript. It could be language independent. Either way, try to work the logic and put it in the chat, right? So yes, let's take a quick, I'll give you a few minutes here. And as soon as the timer is done, we'll come back and continue working on the logic. Okay, yes, so the time is up. I hope you guys have come up with some logic. For this, I was checking the chat. There are several different implementations, right, for this. So I think one or two of them are actually pretty close. You can actually paste the logic in if you haven't sent it in the chat already. Just go ahead and place it in so that I can also, read what you have come up with. I think one logic is Sai Gokul has put a good logic. Array filter is there. Yes, array filter will work when it comes to native JavaScript. But since we are working with React here, we could actually have something better for this, right? So yes, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a minute to quickly load the images in. So let me just do that quickly. So just give me 1 minute. I'll just share the screen again. I'll just get the images quickly. This needs to be stored in assets/images. So these are again simple images. The name is just item 1, item 2, item 3, just like that, right? I'm just getting them one by one. So item 3 is done, then item 4. Again, when I upload this in the repository, I will also add the images as well. So you don't have to worry about getting them. You can just get them from the repository itself. Okay, almost done. 8 and 9. Done. Okay. Okay, I'm sharing the screen again, and let's fix the routing of the images now. So yes, I've added the images. I'll quickly show them to you. They are here in a folder called assets. Within that, we have images, and then here are all the images, right, of all these dishes. Now, obviously, in the data, I think the link is a little different. It is the correct link from index.js, but we are currently in menu.js. So what we can do is we can just do a quick addition, right? Which is to the existing URL, which is props.dish image. We could just add dot dot slash. I think this should get this done. So let's see if we can do some logic like this. And okay, so we go back one folder that brings us here. Then we have assets and then we have images. Let me check the data also once. So we have assets, images, and item 1. This is the URL. But then again, right? So the idea is, I think I just realized this. This should not be in the source folder. It should actually be in the public folder. And the reason for that is if we are using images in the source folder, then what we need to do is we need to import them first. Just like we import everything else in React, you can see now the images show up. So yes, just like we import everything else in React, we need to import the images as well. But if we just put them in the public folder, they are directly shown, as you can see. So the images are in public assets images, and then now they are showing up on our screens, right? Great. Now, of course, what we have to do is to reduce the size of the image naturally. because that is the only reason why they're taking up the full row. So I'll just write this in the index.css so it applies everywhere. And let's just set the width to something like 30% or so. And you can see now this looks a little better. And of course, the whole 9 dishes are showing up properly. And that brings us to the arrangement now. So again, the point is CSS, you can definitely work on it, right? Yes, and the arrangement is like so because we have a single dish being called every time and we can't really do anything about it. We want one dish only, right? So we can probably add a style or change the style of the dish overall to reduce its width. So we can reduce the width probably right, to something again smaller. I'll leave this up to you. You can of course change the styles, in whatever way you would want. I'll just try one thing out. If it works, it works. Yes. So as you can see, we have 3 dishes in a row now. And let me just make it 33. So we have, let's go a little more than 40. So we are left with only two. Yes, perfect. So two in a row now. This works. And I think I'll also set a margin bottom probably to something like this so that we have some space. Perfect. Looks much, much better and a little more closer to the output as you can see. Right now, of course, the idea is that you should definitely style them further, add padding, change colors, all that is up to you. I have given you a generic template here. Now let's work on the logic quickly. So for the logic, first thing is we have to have these buttons in place and that is going to be inside our menu. So this is called our menu. And in the menu.css, we can style h1 text align center. I guess that should do it. So the menu should show up at the center. Then under this, we can have an HR. We can also have it call it a div, but it could also be an HR, right? So let's give it an ID of menu bottom, right? Or let's say menu title bottom, something like this. So it is a bottom of the menu. We can also make it border bottom. So there are multiple ways to do this. Right? We can make it border bottom, let's say 2 pixels solid red, something like this. And this will also show up. As you can see, a full line shows up. And of course, we can reduce the width of the H1 to make it, let's say 30% or something. So this will make it smaller, as you can see. So there are different ways to achieve this result. Up to you. I'll just not put the HR. I'll leave it with a normal HR for now, right? So this is our HR. Perfect. Now, then the next bit that we are going to have are all the buttons. So let's put them in div. Let's give it a class name of all buttons. We can also make it a section here at this point of time. It will also work fine. Then we can have all the buttons. Let's write one button and we can then copy paste it several times. So this all button, right? Then let's paste it. So we have all thing, then we have breakfast, then we have lunch. And what else do we have? Shakes and dinner. Right? So shakes and dinner, and these are also the corresponding categories as well. Right? So in the menu, if we notice, these are the categories as well. So breakfast, dinner, shakes, right? So these are the categories, lunch, and all is all. Everything should be shown. Now, to get the logic, to get to the logic, naturally, since we are keeping a track of something, it basically means that we need a state. Right? We need a local state here to keep a track of the logic. So, or to keep track of the current selection. So that's going to be use state. Then here we can say const, let's say dish, or let's say filter. We can again call it whatever we want. Let's say selected category. So const selected category, comma set selected category, right? And this is going to be use state, and the default is going to be all. Right? So the default category that we have is going to be all. Right? Perfect. Now we will simply write one function which will change the category on a button click. So let's call it, let's say show dishes or filter dishes. I'll call it filter dishes like so. And this will be an arrow function. It will take an input as well. So this will be the category. And then we'll just say set selected category back to the category that is being chosen. Perfect. That's it. Now, how this works is, well, whenever we click on a button, we want to attach an on click to it. The on click will actually call right? It is going to call the method which we have just created, that's filter dishes, right? So filter dishes will be called. And then what do we pass in over here? Well, in the case of the first button, we will just pass in all. So this will be in string because this is the category that will be set. That's it. Now, just like this, we just create on clicks for all buttons like so. So this one, the category will be breakfast. Here it will be lunch. Then we will have shift, and then we will have dinner. Perfect. So now on click, all of these will of course change, right? Done. The final step is to work with this part. So we want this again to be dependent on the category, right? We don't want this to be a generic all dish display, because right now, even if we check the output, right, it will still show us everything. Even if I click those buttons and all, you can see nothing is actually changing, right? Because the even though the category is getting modified, it is not being displayed in the output, right? So let me test first if the category is being displayed or not. What we can do is we can say console.log and then the selected category. Let's just try to print the current category out just to see what we are working with. So I'll go to the console there, right? Let's work with this. So I'll click on all breakfast. And you can see this is not working. Lunch, shakes, dinner, none of these are working right now because we're getting nothing in the console. So probably it means something is wrong in our setup. So that is something we have to check. Another thing is it says each child should have a unique key prop, and that is true. We have a unique property available called an ID with us. So we can pass that to the dish, right? So when we create the dish here, we can pass in ID, and this can be equal to dish.id. This is actually going to be key equal to dish.id. So now that error or that warning, that error rather should go away. And let me refresh. I have just refreshed this, and you can see now the error is gone. And this time around, the button clicks are also working fine. As you can see, whichever button I click, that corresponding output, it shows up here in the chat or in the console. So perfect. Now we have figured out that how to read the category from the user. Finally, we just have to filter our menu down to those button clicks, right? So that logic will change here. In addition to simply displaying the data out, what we want to do is, right? So for each dish here, instead of returning the whole thing directly, what we can do is we can write some logic right over here. Of course, at the end of the day, we have to return a dish, but then we can decide which dish or belonging to which category a dish should be returned, right? So we can say, first of all, selected category can be equal to all. If it is equal to all, then fine. So this is the first thing. Or if it is not equal to all, so this is the default selection. Otherwise, selected category should be equal to the dish dot category. So dish is what we are filtering over here. Right? So for each dish, pick it from the category, right? And finally, we are going ahead and returning. So this can be put in one bracket. Okay, done. And then we can go ahead and we can call the rest of the whole setup. So, and we can then remove this and put the dish. So let me just make sure the brackets are all correct here. Done. Right. So what we're doing is, let me just check first if this is showing up. You can see this is showing up. Let's click on breakfast. You can see it's filtered to breakfast now. Lunch filtered to lunch. All back to all. Dinner, shakes, lunch, breakfast, all. So now this is working fine as expected. Let me show you what is going on in terms of logic. So we are checking two things. We are checking, is the category selection all? This is going to be the default value. So this would mean nothing has been clicked. No button has been clicked yet. So if no button has been clicked, then it's fine. We'll just show all. Otherwise, if there is a button click, so then we change the thing. Right? So then we are saying that the selected category should be equal to dish.category, or rather the dish.category should match the selected category, and only then the dish will be displayed. Right? So these are the two conditions, and then we are displaying the dish. Okay, so this is our logic that we are writing in order to achieve this output, right? Again, you can work on the CSS bit. That's actually pretty simple, but you can see this is how we got it done, right? So again, I can just quickly work the CSS a little bit. So again, I can make this button thing a display, flex, and then we can basically just say justify content space between. Probably that should look a little okay, not really. Maybe space around. Okay, a little better. So again, the point is we can get to all of these things. We can figure out the logic as well. We can figure out the styling as well. It's actually not very difficult, right? So we can just have some padding inside the button, increase the font size a little bit, make it bold. So we can just do a couple of quick changes. Of course, the colors can also be changed, but these just make the buttons look a little prominent. And then, of course, at the end of the all buttons, we can have a margin bottom just to move it further down. Yeah, there you go. This looks a little bit okay to me now, better than before. But of course, we can also have some padding within that dish as well. So if you go to dish.css, I think here we can also add a padding of 20 pixels or so, so that we space things out a little. As you can see, the headings are now spaced out. And yeah, we can also add a little more padding, I think, here within dish details. So yes, let's put that in. So dot dish details, padding 20 pixels. And there you go. Looks much better now, right? So this is the setup that we have. Of course, you can change the background color, change the size, move things around. You know how to do that. But yes, this is pretty much how we work the logic, right? So any questions at this point? Let me take a few questions if there are any, and then I will move to the router part. So I also want to just recap the routing bit so that we understand how that works. And yeah, then we can work with this. Yes, so a few people in on YouTube Live are also telling us a shortcut, which is a really good shortcut actually. Is that if you want to repeat something here, you can just use Alt, Shift, and Down keys. So that will basically create a copy of it. You can see, right? So instead of manually copying and pasting it, we could just take our cursor to whatever we want to copy. Let's say we want to copy this H1 and just Alt, Shift, Down. So every time you click the button, it will create a copy. So it's a good shortcut. Yes, thank you so much for sharing. Yes, so that's on the YouTube Live. Let me also check the Zoom chat if there is anything here. Not really. No. Okay, perfect. So there are no other questions as of now. Great. That brings us to the final part, which is the routing bit. Again, we have already seen how this works. I just want to show you quickly, right, just so that we recap this and we wrap up React by covering everything again, right? So now I'll create another component. Let's call it about.js. I'll keep it very simple. It is just going to be a routing bit. So I'll just make it about, and let's put H1 about, and that's it. I don't want anything else for now. I'll just put this in a link probably and put another because I will want another link over here as well. So let's go for norm insert a paragraph. Done. So I've just added one component called about. Now what we want to do is we want to create a link. Let's create it as one of the buttons itself. So that way we will of course not use on click and all of this, but we'll create a button and we'll call it go to about. This is going to be our link. So of course we don't use just the button. We will also need link. But for this, we need to also install the package. Can you tell me the name of the package in the chat? Which package do we use to install the router? React router DOM. Perfect. So React router DOM. Done. This is the package. Let me add this. And again, this is nothing new. Everything that we have discussed today, nothing is new. Everything we have already covered in the past 3 sessions, right? So I hope it was not confusing because we have already covered all of this in the previous sessions as well. Perfect. Now we can start this again. And now let's set up the router. So there are 3 steps that we need to do to set up the router. Right? If you remember, step 1, we have to do this in index.js. So here, instead of the menu directly, we need 3 imports. Let's import them one by one. we need something called the browser router. If you remember, that's the first thing, browser router. Then we need something called routes. And then finally, we need something called route from React router DOM. Perfect. These are three imports that we need. Then we can set it up. So the way we set it up is going to be DOM done. So the way we set it up is first we have the browser router, right, which is the outermost wrapper. Within this, we create another thing called route. And then within the routes, we create each individual route. So we can say route, and then the path can be specified. And then the element that needs to be loaded, that is specified in the HTML style syntax, something like this. And then we can close off our route. I will copy this, make one more copy of this, and the route is going to be about. And this time we want the about component to load. Right? So let me just import that as well. Perfect. This is it. Then we can go to our menu and we can quickly attach this to the button. So the button can be turned into a link. This link will come from React Router DOM. And so that's the link bit. And then we can add to, and then the path is slash about. Done. So this is how we can add a link, right? And that is it. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the button. The button is available here. Go to about, I click on it, and immediately we reach the about page. As you can see, that's it. Again, the application is never reloaded in the browser. It is opened in the same setting. Right? So we don't reload the application. That is the whole point of routing with React. Right? The whole point of router is the app is never reloaded again. We just shift between elements. So basically we remove the menu from the root and add the about instead of that. Right? So we use the same HTML, the menu is removed and about is added over there. This is how the setup is, right? Perfect. So yes, this is basically it in terms of routing. No. So Sunil, actually, he has a good question. So Sunil is saying you're creating multiple files for multiple components. Is it the right way to do it? Yes, this is the right way to do this because of two things. Number one, again, we have to understand that when we take a real world application, there are multiple people who are working on a project, right? And typically different components are assigned to different people. So creating separate files basically is going to let them focus on their work without worrying about affecting the other person's work. And number two, the next question he's asking is because it may increase the size of the whole site, which may in turn affect speed and SEO. No, see, even if you put everything in a single file, it will be the same size. We are just breaking it into smaller chunks. We are not writing additional lines of code, right? So that way the size of the website is not really increased. And obviously at the end of the day, when we create the website, when we build the website, it is being built into a single HTML itself, right? So again, the splitting is just done during development. When we deploy this, it is going to be converted back to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, so that is going to be a single file again, right? So yes, it does not affect the SEO in any way. Neither does it, affect the loading times. In fact, it will be better for loading because only a tiny component needs to load at one point of time. So it's actually faster that way, right? Done. Perfect. Now that's basically it in terms of the material, the content that we wanted to cover for today. I will quickly show you the project right now. So the next project that you're working with, the next React project that you are working with is something I'll just show you right now. I will also add the link, to the repository while we are here. So let me head over to the browser and okay, let me just open this up. Just give me a second. I just tested it a few minutes ago. So let me just pull that up. Yes, there we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. So I'll just share the screen again. You can just focus on the screen now. So yes, here is our assignment. This is a React assignment, as you can see. And this is what it looks like. So I'll click on the complete button. This opens it up. And this is what it looks like. So again, what you have to do is you have to fetch use the Google Books API. I have given the link over here in the assignment, right? So again, I'll show you how the API works as well. What you have to do is basically read an input from the user. As you can see, there's a single input button, input field and a search button. So this is something that you have to read from the user. And as soon as the user presses the search button, you have to connect to the Google Books API and fetch the book details like this, right? So I'll show you a quick demo of the API as well, so that you understand exactly what needs to be done, right? So when we connect to the API, you can see just like we did with the random user, it gives us data, as you can see. So this gives us about 10 books. Okay, this gives us about 10 books, as you can see, right? And yes, so again, this is where you get the data from. Very simple. Read the input from the user. We know how to do this. You will create a use state. You will create a handler function. You will attach it to input on change. When the button is clicked, again, you will create a function to fetch data or fetch books. So when the search button is clicked, you connect to the API using Axios, get the books and display them on the screen, right? So this is your next assignment. This will be due by next Wednesday. So again, 1 week. So by next Wednesday, this will be due. And again, the submission is the same way. Browse files, add everything and submit. I think here you can make a zip file. That will be better because it's a React project. So remember, this is to be done using React, not normal HTML or normal JavaScript. This is a React project, right? So you can make a zip file probably and use the zip file, upload the zip file as a submission, right? So yes, that's what we will have as the next assignment, right? I've already shown this to you. So yes, I hope that makes sense. And again, you can use, I mean, you can refer to the previous sessions as well, right? To submit or when you're submitting, right? So yes, okay, I will explain again. Please pay attention, you guys. Repeating everything twice is a big problem because it takes all of our time, right? So yes, let me just go back to the assignment. There you are. So this is the assignment. Again, the link will be added to the repository. I will add it right now. I will also give you in the chat also the link. I'll just put it in the chat also. The assignment is this. You can see it's also written properly. Use the Google Books API. I've given you the link to the API to fetch the list of books and display them on the front end. You have to read the book title from the user. So what you have to do basically is to create an input field, like you can see, with a button. So in the input field, the user will type the name of the book. You have to handle this with the on change, right? Once the user clicks the button, you have to use Axios and use effect. Right? So Axios will do. We don't really need use effect in this case. So you'll use Axios to connect to the API, get the book details. Right? The book details look something like this. Again, this is going to be the response that we get from the API. It will contain the image URL, as you can see, right? Preview link, info link. The images are all here, and it will also contain the name of the book, title, and authors. So this is what you have to print on the screen. This is your final output. You can see there is an image, the name of the book, and the author. If there are multiple authors, print all of them out. If there are multiple authors, all names should be printed out. The submission should be a zip file, which will be your React project. So delete the node modules folder. We don't need that. We need your package.json, source folder, and public folder. So package log, source, and public. These things we need. You can remove node modules. That is not needed. Otherwise, the upload size will become very big. So remember, remove node modules folder, delete node modules folder before you submit, right? So yes, this is your assignment. The deadline is going to be next Wednesday. So 1 week from now, by next Wednesday, you are required to submit it, right? Perfect. Now that brings us to the next part, which is 3 questions as always. So let's quickly discuss these, and then I'll also, I'll share the assignment link in the chat after we discuss these questions. So again, read the question, put a yes or a no, or like put the correct choice in the chat, and let's see if that's correct or not. Perfect. So this is option 2. That is exactly right. Right. The role of props is to pass data from parent to child, like what we have seen today also. Perfect. Then what is the primary purpose of the set state method? So this is the corresponding method that we create in use state. What is the purpose of that method? Right. So the correct answer here is option 4. Right. The whole point of set is to update the state, like we have seen, right? Counter, set counter. selected category, set selected category. So that set method is used to update the value or update the state of the whatever state we have in the component. Perfect. Here is the final one. So which of the following is the correct way to condition any render content in React? Again, we have seen an example of this also today. One, perfect. One is the correct answer. We use the ternary operator. So we put a question mark and then decide based on the condition, this or this, that should be displayed. Perfect. Those are all the questions for now. Yes. So now the feedback link is also being put in the chat, and I am also putting the assignment link in the chat. Please make sure you check the assignment link out before you leave. And also please fill the feedback before you leave. So I have checked the assignment link in the chat. A lot of please take it from there. I'm also sending the same on YouTube as well. And again, the topic for today is, yes, the topic is React project. That was the name of the topic. So yes, I'm also putting the assignment link in the YouTube chat as well. I have done that. And yes, the feedback link is also in the chat. So please make sure you fill the feedback before you, oh, hold on. So again, I've put the assignment link once again, just in case for people who missed it, you can check it out. And let me get the feedback link as well. Just a second. Yes, the feedback link is also now in the chat. I have put that in multiple times. Please take a minute and fill that in. And yes, that's it for today. Let's meet on Friday and continue the discussion from there. And yes, I put the same thing on YouTube as well. Also, remember that no, the books will come from the API push, that they will be searched from the API based on the user input. So once we get the user, then we will, basically, once we get the value from the user, we will connect to the API and get the data from there. Yes, so this is for YouTube Live. Vishnu. Vishnu is saying that he's getting an error in the ESLint thing. So Vishnu, please update your ESLint. It should be ES7 or later. So please make sure that you update it. And yes, I put the feedback link in the YouTube chat as well. I've put the assignment link also in the YouTube chat. So please go ahead and fill that in. And yes, in case it is not working, then you will get an email with the link. I really can't do anything about that. But yes, the tap link is working. I showed it to you while sharing the screen. So, you should be able to do that. Again, so Kumar, you'll have to do a little bit of research, right? You have to do a little bit of research because again, if I tell you how the API works, then that is basically solving the assignment for you. So read about it and figure it out, right? Great. Finally, so this is for the assignment execution. So for people who missed the assignment execution, please watch the recording and you can check it out, right? And yes, so that's basically what we have. Today we created the restaurant menu application, right? Which is, if you see, works something like this. So we have a menu like this, and then we have several buttons here. So whenever we click on a button, the menu gets filtered down, right? To only the basically the dishes belonging to that particular category. So if you click on shakes, only shakes show up. If you click on breakfast, only breakfast shows up. If you click on all, then all dishes show up. This is also the default value, right? So yes, this is basically what we have. And yeah, that's what we discussed today. So Nani, from the YouTube live, this was for you. So I hope you now have a recap of what we did today. And again, so for the links, please scroll in the chat. I've pasted them several times on both Zoom and YouTube. So just scroll down a little bit in the chat and you will find the feedback link as well as the assignment link, right? So yes, that is it for today. Thank you so much, you guys, for attending. See you guys on Friday. So on Friday, we'll move to the next part, the backend. So we'll start talking about Express. So yes, that's what's coming up. Until then, have a great day. Try working on the assignment if possible. Let's continue the next one. Bye-bye.